morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone, wherever you are joining us from. We welcome you to the opening plenary of the Asia Water Forum 2022 from Manila, Philippines, the headquarters of the Asian Development Bank. My name is Neeta Pokrel. I'm the Chief of Water Sector Group at the Asian Development Bank. Asia Water Forum 2022 is back after a challenging period. Over the last couple of years, we have been confronted by a global pandemic that has indeed forced us to reevaluate our systems for public health, service delivery, and investments. In the water sector, coping with this new normal coincides with our efforts to adapt to climate change, rapid urbanization at the same time, and resource scarcity. As such, the theme for the Asia Water Forum 2022 is also our singular goal: resilient and water secure Asia and the Pacific. This year, we are bringing you a fully virtual conference. We would have liked to see you in person since we are fully open and welcoming all guests here at the ADB headquarters and our offices in the resident missions and regional offices also. However, the virtual format does provide us an opportunity for more people to join the conversation in our technical sessions, workshops, and high-level panels such as these. We are delighted indeed to share with you today an unprecedented number of water stakeholders have registered for the Asia Water Forum 2022. As of 8 a.m. this morning, the number is at 3,013 water sector stakeholders. And research shows that online conferences such as these can save around 500 to 1,500 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per participant from avoided travel. So you can just multiply that by 3,000 plus registrants. So we would like to know this morning, now you're joining, or afternoon or evening, where you are joining us from. If you could do so by answering a survey question that is currently appearing on the right side of your screen, which says, which region are you located in? East Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Oceania, Central and West Asia, Middle East, Africa, Europe, South America, or North America? Please, if you could do this very short survey poll for us, which is on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, while we await the survey results, let me provide you with an overview of the focus areas for Asia Water Forum 2022. Focus area 1, the first, is water as sustainable resource. We will be looking at the systemic approaches to decision-making, such as resource allocation, water sector policy and regulation, and transboundary cooperation. The second focus area of the forum is universal water supply and sanitation services. We will deep dive into the new methods for achieving the SDG 6.1 and 6.2 targets for universal and equitable access. Third focus area is productive water in agriculture and the economy, where we will explore various ways that sustainable water management will improve economic outcomes, and primarily in agriculture. And with food security and looming crisis on it, you can see the importance of the third focal area. The final focal area is, of course, climate change and water-related risks. We'll tackle the myriad risks, impacts, challenges, and opportunities that water sector is currently facing. And we live in the most disaster-prone area, and we are the most disaster risk-affected people in our region in Asia and the Pacific. Across this focus area, each session will cover 5 cross-cutting themes: embracing environmental sustainability and circular economy, improving governance and catalyzing finance, promoting inclusiveness and gender equality, building resilience and adaptive capacity, and fostering innovation and technical advancement. These topics are being discussed at 18 technical sessions, 11 side events and workshops, 5 high-level panels, and we have over 150 speakers, presenters, moderators. So it promises to be an extremely productive, engaging, and diverse Water Forum. At the closing plenary, we have young water leaders who will synthesize the key messages and our call for action for water security in the region. It is them who will lead us and sustain resilience and security. So we are delighted to have so many of our future leaders with us. Now let's bring up the poll results. Okay, you can see on the screen the regions that we have highest number of the participants joining us. So without further ado, I would like to now welcome our Managing Director General, Mr. Woo Chong-um, and he's also the officer in charge, Vice President for Knowledge Management and Sustainable Development of the Asian Development Bank. Mr. Woo Chong-um, could you please deliver the keynote address? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nita. You can hear me, right? Always have to check. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning from Manila. It's my pleasure on behalf of the Asian Development Bank to welcome you to the 2022 Asia Water Forum. As Nita just mentioned, ADB just returned to what we call stage 4, which is a new normal, and everyone is coming back to the office. And it's quite exciting. We just started doing that last week. So that's why this forum is happening a bit too early. So we can't actually get everyone to come here for the forum. So I'm hoping that we can do this in person sometime in the near future. And I appreciate the savings in terms of CO2 footprint, but there's nothing like the community getting together to meet up and discuss our future. So looking forward to doing that. So there's a sense of buzz here, which is translating into this forum as well. So there's lots of excitement. And this will be certainly a very exciting and knowledge-packed few days, which will showcase some of the creative thinking, cutting-edge practices, and lessons learned from around Asia and the Pacific and beyond. And this is our collective effort to find innovative solutions to tackle complex water challenges to build security and resilience for our region. Since the last Asia Water Forum held in 2018, our challenges have compounded. The world has suffered from COVID-19, as you know, and we are now facing a food security crisis, and the impacts of climate change are becoming increasingly apparent. As you can imagine, water played a critical role in these issues as well. And these realities have underscored the need to quadruple our efforts to address water security and resilience needs. Water is essential for life, and it supports human well-being, economic development, and human health ecosystems, and contributes to most SDGs. And water solutions are also climate adaptation solutions. And Asia and the Pacific, already the world's most disaster-prone region, mostly water-related, is further threatened by climate change. So the battle for climate change will be won or lost in Asia and the Pacific, both with respect to mitigation and adaptation. And to adapt to climate change, we must recognize the critical role of water. As the latest IPCC report says, the adaptation gap is widening. And if we do not act now, very soon will be either too costly or too late, and neither is acceptable. According to the Asia Water Development Outlook, the ADB's flagship water series, 22 out of 49 developing member countries in our region remain water insecure. Of course, through our collective efforts, we are also seeing gradual improvements in water security in some parts of the region, but we are not there yet. More needs to be done to serve the underserved. This represents more than 2 billion people, or about 50% of our region's population. The Asia and the Pacific, there are currently 500 million people without access to basic water supplies, and over 1.1 billion people without access to proper sanitation. Demand for food and energy will continue to rise in line with population growth and economic development. Yet agriculture already consumes 75% of fresh water, and irrigation is the main contributor to groundwater depletion. In recent years, we have witnessed increasingly frequent and severe water-related disasters, including floods and droughts. In small water-scarce atoll countries, sea level rise is contributing to saltwater intrusion of groundwater supplies as well. Our region's water security challenges cannot be solved following a business as usual approach. For too long, water has been undervalued and treated as an infinite resource, causing its waste and misuse. The ADB's approach to building a resilient and water-secure Asia and the Pacific in support of Strategy 2030 and the SDGs is based on 5 key principles. First, we need to better manage water by improving governance and breaking institutional silos. The Integrated Water Resource Management, IWRM, approaches that cut across sectors, levels of governments, and national borders are needed to support catchment-wide approaches and more effectively manage growing demands between competing water users. We must also create the enabling conditions to attract private sector investments in water. It's been estimated that countries in Asia and the Pacific needs to invest on average of 1 to 2% of the entire annual GDP to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 6, far beyond what the public sector and development assistance can provide. Public resources can be better used to de-risk and leverage more private sector investments in this space. At the same time, private sector innovation and know-how can also help to drive significant efficiencies and development and delivery of water infrastructure and services. Second, we must embrace the digital future in water. Compared with other sectors, the update of digital technologies by water entities in our region has been lagging. New technologies such as Earth observation systems and artificial intelligence offer huge opportunities to plan, manage, and monitor our water resources more easily and effectively. Third, we must also learn to work with nature, not against it. Nature-based solutions provide opportunities for flood protection, natural water filtration, and wastewater management and treatment. Globally, wetlands are estimated to store 20 to 30% of the world's soil carbon. But rising pollution and uncontrolled development are putting these valuable ecosystems at risk. And water quality is declining in natural bodies because of the inadequate wastewater treatment and polluted agriculture runoff. So circular economy approaches can help to overcome water scarcity and reduce pollution levels. For example, treated wastewater can be used for agriculture and landscape irrigation and groundwater recharge. Fourth, inclusion must be at the center of our efforts to improve and expand access to reliable water supply and sanitation services. The COVID pandemic has also underscored the need to ensure access to basic water supply and sanitation services, particularly for the most vulnerable. We all know now that hand washing is the first line of defense in preventing and reducing the spread of disease, including COVID-19. But this requires access to reliable clean water supply. It is also women who often bear the burden of collecting water when it's not readily available, resulting in hours wasted, time that otherwise could be more productively used for work and studying. So we must do something about this so-called time poverty for women and children, girls. Finally, we need to recognize the central role of water in leading the region's climate change adaptation efforts. Water is the adaptation, what energy is to mitigation. We cannot tackle climate change without building water security in our region. Transformative adaptation investments in water sector will be the key in ADB delivering on its climate change ambition of providing $100 billion in climate financing from our own resources by 2030. And I'm glad to share that adaptation finance is expected to account for at least a third of this amount. I would like to conclude my remarks by saying that although our water challenges seem immense, events such as this provide the opportunity to bring together some of the region's best water thinkers and doers to collectively identify solutions. And as you will notice, and as mentioned by Nita, over the course of the next few days, young water leaders will feature prominently at this year's Asia Water Forum. The effects of climate change in the coming decades will not only be felt most by our young people, but our young water professionals are the key to tackling the region's water security challenges by bringing innovative thinking and fresh ideas. So I wish you all a very constructive and stimulating discussion, and especially look forward to the contributions from our young leaders. We are doing this for the young people, aren't we, at the end of the day? Thank you very much.
Thank you, MDG Woo Jong-um. We are indeed doing it, and we have a focus of finding entry points for our young leaders. So what we can crack this shell and ensure our sector is led by the young and has more diversity. Thank you very much for also outlining the opportunities. It does seem immense, but we have opportunities that we can leverage to ensure that we have water security and resilience in the region. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to introduce our keynote panelists. We have four distinguished panelists today with us to reflect on the topic of strengthening water security and resilience in our region. Honorable Chone Usamate, who is the Minister of Infrastructure Meteorological Services of Fiji, if I could invite him, please. Ms. Suzanne Gabri, the Director General of Private Sector Operations Department of Asian Development Bank, Ms. Gabri. Engineer Taksim Khan, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Dhaka Water Supply and Sewerage Authority. We call it Dhaka WASA. Please join us. And finally, we have Deborah Komini, who is the Regional Director of UNICEF for East Asia and Pacific based in Bangkok. She's responsible for program coherence and advocacy for UNICEF in the region. In the interest of time, I won't give a long introduction, but very quickly, Honorable Chone Usamate, before being the Minister of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services and Minister for Lands and Mineral Resources of Fiji, was the Minister of Health and also Member of Parliament, and he has held multiple government positions in Labour, Industrial Relationship Ministry, Ministry of Employment Opportunities, Productivity, Industrial Relations, and Training and Productivity Authority of Fiji. Welcome, Honorable Usamate. Ms. Suzanne Gabri, before joining as the Director General of Private Sector Operations in ADB, was the Chief Investment Officer as FinDev Canada, where she was responsible for strategic vision, including defining business markets, clients, product investment strategy, and development. She has 28 years of professional experience spanning 85 developing and emerging countries. Mr. Taksim Khan, again, is a visionary leader in the region. He is a successful reformer who has made a dramatic reform called Dhaka WASA Turnaround, which converted a losing organization into a profitable, environment-friendly, sustainable, and pro-people utility, which serves as a benchmark in our region. Ms. Komini, again, thank you. Before joining as UNICEF's regional director, she started her career in UNICEF in 1991, held several senior positions, also in the headquarters, and she's currently responsible for program coherence and advocacy for UNICEF across the region. Welcome to you all. Before we start the panel discussion, I would like to acknowledge our young water professional reporter for this session, Jihan El Sifat, who is the technology consultant for IL Utilities of the Asia Pacific region. Each of our high-level panelists' technical sessions are having reporters, young water professionals, again, to tell us how we can synthesize and go forward. Now that we have heard the keynote speech from Mr. Om about the big picture of water security opportunities in the region, I would like to start with our panelists on, in your views, what are the biggest challenges to realize these opportunities? May I please start with Honorable Minister Chone Usamate of Fiji.
Bula Vinaka from Fiji, and it's a great pleasure to be participating in this panel and to be asked this question. I think we're dealing with the importance of water. And I'd like to think that the keynote address, it has really laid out the major challenges that we face, even in small Pacific nations. The major challenges that as I see it in the small island nations of the Pacific is largely the climate and everything around climate, everything related to climate. Here in Fiji, we can have one climatic event that can wipe out 30% of our GDP overnight. And that has a huge impact on everything that we have had, not only in terms of intense rainfall, but also in terms of dry periods and so forth. So being able to address this, being able to deal with the issues that come around that, and that in turn leads to water security. When your assets are washed out, people just don't have access to water, the water security goes down the lane. And the problem is further, as I said, impacted by the climate change. It's affecting a lot of our regions in Fiji, our western regions, and also our central regions. When the rains come, they are very heavy rainfall, and it leads to all sorts of problems into our intakes, and also damages also our major water catchment areas and our major water sources. So this is a problem that we have been addressing here in Fiji in relation to that. One of the other major challenges that affects small island nations is not primarily related to water, but issues around education, loss of livelihoods, land availability, looking for employment, which means the movement of people from rural areas to urban areas, which creates a lot of problems for water security in our major centers. And this is something that we're seeing in the greater Suva area. I think one of the other major issues that a lot of small island countries face is the aging infrastructure that we have. Not whether a lot of the infrastructure was created a long time ago. It's a challenge to extend your infrastructure, and at the same time, you're already dependent on existing infrastructure, which is very old. So it's a balance of finding the funds to keep up the aging infrastructure and also extend your system. So these are some of the major challenges that we have. And listening to the opening address, and one of the other things that we need is knowledge on how others have dealt with these issues. What are the systems that work? What are having access to those systems? And over and above that, of course, is the need to be able to fund the developments that we need. And issues that we have here in Fiji in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Osamate. Indeed, very succinct, but very stark and pertinent summary of what are the biggest challenges. May I come to you, Suzanne, from financing perspective, what, in your view, are the biggest challenges for our region in realizing the opportunities?
Yes, no, thank you very much, Nita, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, where you might be. We heard MDG Wu Chong mentioned in his keynote remarks that it's estimated that the countries of Asia and Pacific need to invest an average of 1 to 2% of their annual GDP to achieve SDG 6, which is far beyond what the public sector and development assistance can provide. Pardon me. First, I see huge untapped potential for the role that private sector can provide in developing the water sector. We observe that the private sector has been taking on a significant role to develop technologies to enhance climate resilience and improve the sector's overall operational efficiency, which can also help to reduce overall investment requirements that are required. For example, the development and use of artificial intelligence tools, intelligent hardware or Internet of Things devices, or other digital type products can help predict floods, monitor water use for efficiency and leakage, and be used for other important use cases. So these are all great developments, and we see continued improvements day by day. I'd also like to share some examples that we're looking at from ADB. So, for example, we have an ADB-funded water and wastewater projects which continue to provide essential services, including with some valuable adjustments such as additional support to vulnerable people with free water and water kiosks, enhanced staff safety, and increased water quality testing frequency and locations. Further, digital solutions played a critical role during lockdown. As we know, during COVID, it has actually enhanced and encouraged lots of innovation and development, particularly in the IT space. In regions with strong digital capabilities, many critical public service infrastructure projects, not only in water, but also other essential public sector areas, took huge and heroic measures to ensure continuous remote operation during lockdowns. This was really essential. And now these same projects are institutionalizing those approaches and reducing costs. This has had positive impact on the planning process. No longer are decisions being made solely on the basis of probability and expected costs, but rather on ensuring that a city's essential services continue to operate under all scenarios. Robust resilience plans based on similar approaches will be needed for all essential infrastructure. Second, I'd like to highlight the energy-water nexus as related to climate change mitigation and adaptation. The energy efficiency is a straightforward concept, yet it is still quite challenging to ensure energy efficiency across the water value chain. The cost of electricity is a major consideration in wastewater treatment and reuse. Electricity accounts for some 50% of direct costs in wastewater treatment, and 25 to 30% of electricity is more electricity is needed to meet reuse standards. So this is significant costs that we need to be addressed. Wastewater reuse is one of the key areas that we want to promote more, but it faces competition from other sources of water, such as groundwater, surface water, which are widely subsidized. Adaptation is more challenging as we need to deep dive analysis of each unique project under various weather scenarios. So with that, thank you, Nita. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gabri. Indeed, it's not just about investment. It is about making sure where we invest is resilient and with the right approach of circular economy. If I may now move on to Mr. Taksim Khan on your take in a nutshell, what are the biggest challenges realizing this opportunity? You represent a water entity on the ground in our region, so we're keen to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nita, and thank you, the Vice President, Mr. Wang Chung. Yes, probably he has already mentioned a lot of areas that where we are lagging and areas where we need to improve to make water secure in our region, in our countries. Basically, as you already mentioned, that I'm just talking about the water utilities. That means the drinking water or the potable water, and what are the challenges that we are facing in order to realize that the opportunities of water security here. I think one of the most challenges that we are facing, and similar to us, the countries and the cities, is one of the things is the bankability of the organization. That means investment, lack of investment, one of the opportunities that is lagging, and the capacity building, institutional capacity building of the institutions like us, which is very important. Because at least for us, we can say one of the statistics will be very important to know that we are in Dhaka, one of the mostly densely populated city, having almost 20 million people, and we are serving 20 million people from one organization, and that's, of course, it's a huge task. So we have a lot of great challenges in every stage that we are facing, especially for realizing the opportunities of the water security. And obviously, to some extent, we will say that we probably we can say that we are a little bit water secure, but of course, every moment we have a lot of challenges. And another challenge is digitization, non-digitization. If we can go for digitization, we can go for computerization, go for automation. That's also better to secure water. And that's what we have done here. Then the conservation of water, which is very important because very often we are wasting our water. That means the use of water. That's also a big challenge. And most important that we call is mindset change, which is very important because we have some mindset where we are, say, for example, for the conservation of water, we have some peculiar mindset. We have some peculiar mindset that water is a free item because it's God-given. So why should we pay for the water? So this mindset need to be changed. More and more digitization is required. More and more, capacity, institutional capacity building, especially to make the organization bankable. Because without investment, without having a lot of technologies in your side, you cannot go ahead. And that's the reason why make the organization more capable of attracting investment is very important. And obviously, blending it with the government and private sector. That means we strongly believe that one of the best way to secure water security is to make the organization a blending of government, private, and the change of mindset. So I think these are the challenges that we are facing. And if we can overcome those challenges, obviously, we'll secure water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Indeed, making the organizational bankable and building capacities are two areas where we really do focus on at ADB. With this, if I could invite Ms. Deborah Komeni of UNICEF to also add what, in your view, are the biggest challenges, in a nutshell, realizing the opportunities for our sector. Ms. Komeni.
Thank you, Nita, and good morning, good day from Bangkok. I'm coming last, and the previous speakers have already highlighted the main challenges, starting with the climate crisis, of course. So I would like to bring in a very child-specific focus here, because the climate crisis is a child rights crisis, water insecurity is a child rights crisis. But these are very, very, very recognized as such. So let's think about it again through the lenses of children. And I will start with the very, very, very simple basics. The impact of water scarcity on health, children's right to health, because water scarcity is correlated with diarrhea. And when children get sick with diarrhea, they cannot absorb all the nutrients they need to grow. And that can lead to stunting, and that can lead to damage, irreversible damage, physical damage, but also cognitive development damage. And this is very serious. In the Asian Pacific region, we still have very high prevalence of stunting across the region, especially for children below age 5. We have the shocking rates of countries like Papua New Guinea. 50% of children are stunted. I mean, these are really very serious numbers that boil down to the rights of each individual child, and they're linked to the development of the country, and they're linked to water scarcity. And there are other known links between water scarcity and health, poor health. Well, we all know that sufficient water for personal hygiene is critical to prevent infection at home, but also in healthcare facilities. Where do we have water scarcity in the region? Also in healthcare facilities. And this has an impact on the newborn, on mothers, or the patients. And then let's remember that water scarcity also has an impact on education, children's right to education. When water sources dry up, what happens? Children, especially girls, may be forced to drop out of school, spend time collecting water. This will disrupt schooling, will place a burden on children when they carry heavy loads. It's a very high risk for girls, risk of abuse, especially when they have to walk for long distances to fetch water. And also, when schools do not have adequate access to water, children, teachers cannot wash their hands, clean their classrooms, again, impact on health through the school environment. And then there is an impact on school attendance and motivation. Dropout from school, we know, is much higher when schools do not have proper facilities. And this becomes more serious for girls, especially adolescent girls, when menstrual hygiene becomes a basic necessity. Again, this is a very strong correlation with water scarcity. And then I would like to touch upon the impact of water scarcity on livelihood, because livelihood at the family level has the biggest impact on their children. Years of consecutive drought have shown us in the region that this limits household income, increases the cost of basic necessities. We are estimating that of all the jobs in the global workforce, about 78% are highly dependent on water. And well, we see that in agriculture. When water scarcity, fluctuations in temperature, in rainfall reduce the productivity of the land, of course, we have an immediate impact on the income of rural households and their capacity to provide for their children. But then it will also mean less economic opportunities, increased youth unemployment, increased migration, and so on and so forth. Hence, what I say is that addressing climate change and water insecurity is not only the right thing to do for children, it's also the smart thing to do for the entire society. We can only achieve water security for every child when families and communities have access to water that is safe, that is reliable, that is affordable, that is resilient to threats, including climate threats. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Komini. Extremely apt. We are in a region, Asia-Pacific region, on average, 4 hours is spent by mostly women and girls in our region fetching water. I myself grew up in a small town in Nepal. I did not have running water, and we relied on stand posts, and I was the lucky one. I did not personally have to collect, but many of my fellow country women and girls did drop out of school and had high incidence of diarrhea. Thank you very much for raising this important issue. Now, if I may go back to Honorable Minister Chone Usamate of Fiji to ask you, Fiji, one of the Pacific nations, is, as you outlined yourself, is at the forefront of climate change, and very heartening. You said one event will wipe out a lot of GDP of your country. So would you please describe the country's wastewater infrastructure strategy to cope with this, to cope with the rising sea levels and rapid urbanization, especially in the capital, Suva, and how you are doing or planning and on dealing with the pressures on water resources. Over to you, Honorable Minister Usamate.
Thank you very much. Yes, climate has an impact on us every day, and in particular for our water sector. So there is a major, because of urbanization also, where people are congregating in a certain part of Fiji, in particular the capital, we've had to invest in much more capital to address this. In terms of, in our central districts, we produce less water than the demand. So we've had to share water out. So there is a major investment that is now taking place in, especially for our rivers, where our current water supply for Suva is. We've had to move this upstream because of saltwater intrusion. So that has been a massive undertaking for us. And this new treatment plant that we, with the assistance of the IDB and also with the GCF and the government, we're looking at investing in this new 40 megaliter water treatment plant that also has a 10 megaliter reservoir that should help address the water needs in our greater urban area, especially around the capital. And as I said before, one of the big problems that we've had there is the rapid urbanization that has led to people congregating in certain parts of the country. Overall, what government has done is look at all the impacts of climate on the country, and then has laid out a national climate finance strategy of the kinds of things we need to focus on as we deal with climate, whether it's to do with power, whether it's to do with water. So a lot of these major infrastructure projects are reflected in the national climate finance strategy. But overall, for the sector as a whole, we're trying to have a more holistic approach to water. So the government is now putting in place a water sector strategy for 2050 that looks at climate resilient infrastructure of the future. And this strategy will look at underpinning integrated water resource management, which will be critical in building our climate resilience adaptation strategy for Fiji. There's a strong emphasis on increased access to wash in both urban, rural, and our informal communities. And in this, we work with government agencies. There's also extensive work being undertaken on our legislative framework to address this area. Sometimes things have been happening in different silos. Things happen in isolation. So we need to bring everything together into one legislative package. So currently in Fiji, there's a work on our national water resource management and sanitation policy that guides the provision of water supply and sanitation to all Fiji. So it manages all the water resources rather than having them managed separately. There's also now a focus on our groundwater resource development and management policy to look also at groundwater. One of Fiji's biggest exports is groundwater. So we need to make sure that we don't export too much at the expense of the needs of our local communities. And over and above this is a national integrated water resource management plan that provides a roadmap for coordinated development and management of water, land, and related resources in order to maximize economic and social welfare in an equitable manner without compromising the sustainability of our vital ecosystems and environment. So there's an investment of looking at what the big infrastructure requirements are and also looking at our legislations and our policies to make sure that everything is working in tandem. And I think the last thing that we're heavily focused now is partnerships right across the board, because water security is a cross-cutting issue. It affects multiple sectors and it requires a number of partnerships active across the region, within the country, so that we can have knowledge, you can have approaches that provide high-level strategic guidance. And some of these partnerships already exist in the Pacific. They are the Pacific Resilience Partnership, allowing us to work with other countries. And we have the Pacific Regional Infrastructure Facility and the Pacific Health Ministers, Pacific Water and Wastewater Association. And through all of these partnerships, we hope to be able to address, we're looking forward to being able to address these issues into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister Usamate. Now, if I may go to Suzanne Gabri, Ms. Gabri, a lot of participants, including Mr. Khan, MDG Wuchong, even Minister Usamate, discuss about the critical role of private sector in achieving water security and resilience. Can you share a bit more? I know you did that earlier, but a bit more on catalyzing private sector resources and including them in the development and participation in achieving our SDG 6 goals, please. Over to you, Ms. Gabri.
No, excuse me. Thank you. The Asian Development Bank, as a part of this, has both public and private, sovereign and private sector operations under one corporate umbrella. So this allows us to provide what I would call a continuum of solutions. So where we have both public and private working together on a collaborative basis to provide upstream, midstream, and downstream solutions to problems. Water is no different than this. And so we work on a collaborative basis within the water group sector, within ADB. So this allows us then to actually have a different and more tools in our toolbox is what I will call to provide solutions. So with that, we expect investments in the water sector in the coming 3 years to remain at over $10 billion, which is material. And we will continue to accomplish this through multiple approaches, including knowledge, policy dialogue, and finance and technical assistance support programs. The water sector is often perceived as having political elements by private sector investors. So that means that they probably perceive this as being higher risk from that, which is why the private sector participation in the sector varies country by country. And as a result, it's important to understand each host country's water vision. And I think that that's an important part of how you can tailor your approaches. In some countries, which are opening up their water sector for private sector participation because of this, and because of fiscal constraints, post-COVID and post other issues that the countries have faced. In the PRC, for example, ADB supported the government's regulatory framework and financing of the first public-private partnership project in 1991, so some time ago. And since then, we've been actively financing projects in water supply, including treatment and distribution, wastewater treatment and reuse, sludge, and more recently, river and lake restoration. The government's willingness and readiness to support private sector investments in the water sector vary country by country, as I mentioned, and it's because about setting the enabling environment into a position where the private sector will feel that they will be able to have this combination of impact and return for their investments. So we will work with our developing member countries to both provide technical assistance and policy-based sovereign loans to help improve and enable the market, or the enabling environment, for private sector investments in the water sector. So, for example, in Timor-Leste, we're helping to set up a new water regulatory agency to encourage private sector water investments. It's also important that we work with governments to encourage private sector participation and capacity development of state-owned enterprises in the water sector. To crowd in private sector capital further, ADB's private sector operations department has been working closely with our sovereign operations so that public sector funds can be leveraged to mobilize private sector investments into the sector. We consider our One ADB approach an important way to strengthen water sector policies and regulations and to build the capacity of sectoral institutions to improve the overall environment to enable private sector investments. And to this effect, we have been addressing the bottlenecks for private sector participation. To crowd in private capital, we have tailor-made structures to address unique regional needs and combined and mobilized co-financing from commercial and third-party investors, as well as, where necessary, blending and technical assistance so that every water project can contribute to climate change mitigation and adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gabri. Indeed, we always say in the water sector, it's not the money, it's the governance, it's the enabling environment. Yes. So thank you for joining us in that. On this, I'd like to invite again Mr. Khan, like Minister Usamate. Mr. Khan is also our client in our developing member countries. And out of our $26.4 billion water sector portfolio, Dhaka Wasa has been our strong partner in implementing projects in the country. So after COVID-19 pandemic, many utilities were pushed to the limits of their service delivery. And how has this changed for you in Dhaka Wasa, Mr. Khan, and the way it has been delivering services to customer, particularly to vulnerable sectors? And please do feel free to chime in and add anything you would like on what Ms. Gabri has also mentioned about the right enabling environment, the right risks that the private sector perceives, because you also mentioned in your earlier remarks the need for bankability of your utilities. So please feel free to also add that. But primarily on the pandemic side, Dhaka Wasa did extremely well. How did it change for you? Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. If I have to speak on the effect or impact or the way how we have dealt with the COVID-19, then I have to go back a little bit, which will be also relevant here. Because as I first mentioned, that we are one of the most densely populated city, and probably the densely populated in the world. Why I'm saying this thing? Because as we know that we call mega city, the definition of mega city is the city where the people is staying more than 2,000 people in per square kilometer, and or more than 10 million people. And we are more than 20 million people. And if you ask about the people per square kilometer, we have 45,000 people per square kilometer. So probably it's one of the densely populated, and probably we are one of the largest water utility in the public sector in the world after Sao Paulo. So that's why we have a tremendous challenge. And that's the reason why in 2009, first of all, the government did a great job. They made a wonderful reform in 1996 by adopting WASA Act 1996, passing the parliament. And this WASA Act has enabled us to go forward with most progressive and most, most progressive way of going forward. Say, when we came to the in charge of this water sector in 2009, what we found that the whole total water utilities like Dhaka, Chittagong, and other cities are all adapting and running in a very traditional way. And that's what we thought, and we found that only we have to make a great reform. And if we don't go for the reform, then we can't go forward, and we cannot co-opt with so many people to ensure water for everybody. When we started our journey, there was only 60% of the people of Dhaka city were getting water. Now today, the 100% people are getting water, and we have 24/7 water. So that is one of the first things that we wanted to ensure. And that is the reason why we got a lot of reform. And one of the first reform was bankability. Why I'm saying bankability every time? Because the foremost obstacle and foremost challenge was to build your infrastructure. Until unless you build your infrastructure, how can you ensure water? You cannot extract underground water because it is absolutely not environmental friendly. So we have to go for surface water, and go for surface water means big investment, big infrastructure. So that's why we make a master plan for water master plan and a sewerage master plan, and then we started implementing. Now for implementing, that's why we needed to capacity building of the organization. That is making organization bankable organization, and we made it. Then today we have a lot of investors, a lot of development partners, those who are supporting. Of course, we are grateful that Asian Development Bank is one of the, I would say, the largest partner of Dhaka WASA. Now we have development partners like World Bank, JICA, then of course ADB, then we have AFD, French Development Authority, Chinese Exim Bank, Korean Exim Bank, EDCF. We have European Investment Bank, Luxembourg. We have KfW. So what not? Now we are getting a lot of investment. We are getting a lot of offer from different development partners because we made ourselves bankable. That is the reason why we first focus ourselves to make ourselves bankable organization. And probably we have been able to make ourselves bankable. Now we have, in the meantime, we have completed 5 big mega projects like water treatment plants of capacity of 450 to 500 million liter water per day, which is very big water treatment plants. And we have completed almost 5 big treatment plants within these 14 years. We are now completed 2 sewerage treatment plants, although in our master plan, 3 more sewerage treatment plants has to be done. So this has enabled us, with your first question, how you have been able to co-opt with the COVID. Obviously, that has made us, capable enough to co-opt with the COVID. And not only that, we also started making us a digital organization. What we call, because our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, she's a visionary leader, and she announced that the Bangladesh will be digital Bangladesh. And we also announced that we will become a digital WASA. And today, almost 70% to 80% of our work is totally done automated. All our treatment plants are fully automated. All our pumps are fully under SCADA. All our billing system is fully automated under, under a very good software. And everything, almost everything, including the salaries and other things, are totally computerized. So this has also enabled us to, go forward during the COVID period. And the digitization, how much it has helped during the COVID, we all know. Because one of the impact is this Zoom meeting. Zoom has become a common word now. So every time we are making a Zoom meeting. So that is also a new invention that we made during the COVID. And also during the COVID, one of the good side was that we have been able to make a wonderful planning so that the people, those who were working, were already in the work and they were being isolated and they were being, everything was provided there. Say treatment plants, everybody inside the treatment plants for the several months, and nobody entered and nobody came out. And that's the reason why in our treatment plans, there was no COVID impact, no COVID patients were there. And our all treatment plans were on running. So that these are the issues. I mean, these are the ways that we have been able to overcome those. But the main thing, what I mentioned in the first, that all these things is a mindset. First challenge that we have faced during the reform is the mindset of the people. And we tried our best to change the mindset of the people, to make them understand, to make them, realize that the things, how this is moving on, cannot move. We have to change the impact of the climate change. The impact of everything is there. So that's what we have to. We are also one of the most vulnerable country in the climate change, because our northern part is vulnerable, where we are expecting the rise of sea level will destroy, will inundate a part of the Bangladesh country. So that is the reason why we had to take care of all those issues, and we have taken care. At this moment, some of the good figures that we do have, most of the countries, most of the cities here nearby have very high non-revenue water. That means efficiency of the work, or what you call the good governance. That is, non-revenue water is very high. But our non-revenue water, we have reduced it and reduced almost 5, 6, 7%, which is, I don't know how much you know that in most of the cities here, we have more than 20, 30% of non-revenue water. We have reduced it to non-revenue water like 5, 6%. If you look at the operating ratio means what is the ratio between your OPEX and your income. And our operating ratio is now quite low. So that's a few of the things that we have made. And at this moment, Dhaka Wasa is also trying to, boost up other city of the country. And also what I said, the private sector. We have nearby Dhaka city, one of the satellite city called Purvachal, where we are making a new experiment of PPP, public-private partnership. Totally private sector is now working there for as a water provider, water utility provider. So I'd like to stop here. I probably took so much time, but thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Always very inspiring. Indeed, we are not very proud to acknowledge that on average, the developing Asian cities have around 50% non-revenue water. So we are very heartened, as always, and we have been in your journey for the nearly last 20 years in seeing how you have tackled non-revenue water. Now, I'd like to move to Ms. Komini. You have heard Minister Usamate, you have heard Mr. Khan, who are talking about the master plans they're laying out for water and sanitation for all. UNICEF, and you highlighted the right. It is the right of the children. It is the right of the women to go to school. It is the right of the girls not to have to drop out of school when they menstruate. Now, UNICEF published a report called Reimagining Water Security for All just recently, where it was pointed out that early action by policymakers, by utility leaders can avert water security crises. And like bankers like us who are supporting governments. So can you tell us how we can do more and how UNICEF is supporting these preventive measures? So what is your takeaway for us and for the leaders? Thank you.
Thank you, Nita. I will walk you through what UNICEF considers our key initiative here, water security for all, to ensure that all children have access to water supply that is safe, that is affordable, and they live in water secure communities. And we're going by SDG 2030 timeline. We launched the initiative last year. The goal is very ambitious, to reach 450 million children and their families living in high or extremely high water vulnerability, reaching them with resilient solutions by 2025. And that would mean about 1.4 billion people. There are 4 dimensions in our goal: safe and affordable drinking water services for everyone, everywhere, at all times; climate resilient water and sanitation services; and climate resilient communities to be prepared for future shocks that we know will come; prevention of water scarcity crisis through early action, including early warning systems; and preventing zero day in big cities, day zero in big cities. That is the day when big cities have their very last drop of water. We want to avoid getting there. And then force water cooperation for peace and stability. Let us not forget this dimension. Water and sanitation services available for all are part of social cohesion that is fundamental for peace. And to accomplish this, we say we need to reimagine, rethink our approach to water, from supply to usage, infrastructure, governance, management. And we have 4 strategies we outline: advocate for political commitment and policy change, supporting governments to integrate water, sanitation, hygiene priorities into their climate policies, strategies, and plan, my participation today is part of this advocacy pillar. Second, accelerate financing and capacity development. This was already highlighted by previous speakers. We want to be able to attract to the sector financing, including climate financing. Third, mobilize private sector. Again, this was already highlighted, to test and scale innovations and also to professionalize service delivery, because innovation, yes, can improve water use efficiency, also quality, and also reuse, and technology can be used also for early warning and early action systems. And finally, to activate and mobilize young people. Young people are our champions for change, to promote, to demonstrate, to advocate, to express their view on sustainable use and management of water. But again, as already mentioned, we cannot do this alone. This is something that needs to be done in partnerships to achieve water security and to reach all the 450 million children and their families we want to reach. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Komini. Indeed, we have 1.6 or nearly 2 billion people in Asia Pacific region who do not have adequate water supply and sanitation. And as I said, 4 hours of dredging. We are proud. We are partnering with WaterAid and UNICEF on both fronts. If I may, there have been great questions and interactions on the chat, and a couple of questions that have come. I would ask any of the panelists if you would like to take. One is about, I think this is from Clive Lyle from Australia, who said Australia recently experienced widespread flooding and bushfires, which resulted in food shortages. We haven't talked about this very important aspect. It stressed the international food supply chains, both as major exporter, also as an importer. And he's saying, if this future threat is sufficiently recognized and being addressed by the leaders, given the intricate and multidimensional link of food water security, who would like to take this from the panelists, please? Feel free to jump in.
I can take a stab at answering the question.
Please, Suzanne.
Thank you. I think it was one of the points that was answered, or points that was raised earlier, the fact that agribusiness and agriculture uses up to 75% of potable water. And so that's a huge usage. And I think that, we do need to find solutions for this. Food security, as we know, post Russian invasion Ukraine, has increased food insecurity within globally, but also in Asia and Pacific region generally. We know that food supply chains are stressed. I do think that we're going to have to rethink how we use water within the not only the water value chain, but the food supply chain, looking at alternative ways of production, different resilient, for example, resilient seeds, or different ways of different crops that we'll have to focus in on. So I think it's a huge area that we need to focus in on generally. And we'll need, again, a whole of government approach with public and private working together on this, because no one organization, body can actually provide all the solutions. So I do think that more coordinated responses, something like, again, this forum provides for that, but where we can actually have high level actions and concrete actions taken with bringing people and parties together, and then putting those opportunities and those incentives into play. So I think that, that's also the key about creating the right environments for that, bringing everyone together to actually come together and create those positive solutions, because they're challenges and they're not going to go away. So we do need to work collaboratively together to actually help create those solutions.
Thank you, Ms. Gabri. I fully agree. We have another question. This is from Water Authority of Fiji, particularly to Mr. Khan. Bula from Fiji. There's a question on water conservation, especially on behavioral or mindset changes, because you talked about that, and it is really a killer issue. What are some of the strategies that you have taken as water utility to implement these, and what were the results? If you can give a short example, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Result are not yet good, but we have a good campaign. First of all, campaign through, different sort of, our brochures and other thing, number one. Number two, we are announcing that if you conserve water, your bill will be lesser, number one. So if you, instead of asking for reducing the price, better you conserve water so that your bill will be lesser. And that has been already one of the good announcements made by Honorable Prime Minister in the Parliament. When there was a dispute, there was a discussion about the water tariff, water price. And she uttered that better conserve the water so that you will have a lesser bill. Number two, the gap. What do we call the subsidy that we are getting from the government? Government is not asking. Government doesn't want that we should be subsidized. The water should be subsidized that much, especially in the Dhaka city. So government want to reduce the subsidy. That means we have to make the price a little bit higher. And when we are making the price higher, and that is also one of the issues that the people are using. They are conserving the water so that they should have to give lesser bill because they don't want to pay more. So these are the ways that we are trying to make a propaganda, make a good campaign, so that the water will become consumption pattern will be changed. In fact, it has a little bit impact already, because we found that the rich area, those who are really wasting the water, they have started reducing the use of water because of tariff. We have increased the tariff, and also we are now going for differing tariff style, like area-wise tariff, not the flat rate tariff. So that will also make and that's one of the biggest strategy that we have taken now, and a survey and research is going on, how to make the water price different in different areas of the city, especially for the, those who are more solvent, those who are rich people, for them it will be higher. For, poor people, like what we call the LIC, low income community. One of the things that I didn't mention, that we are providing water to everybody, even in the low income community, those who are living in the slum areas, we are also providing them water and providing it at a cheaper price. So that is the way how we are trying to conserve water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Now, if I may move to Honorable Minister Usamate again, for your final thoughts on there are a lot of water sector leaders and actors present here. 3,000 over actors have registered. We will be recording, making this available to all of them. What is your message, the most important, you think, for the water sector leaders, actors, the young leaders present here? What should they focus on to accelerate water security and resilience in the region?
Thank you for that opportunity. I think the session so far today has been very invigorating, very useful. And there are a lot of things you talked about: using the right tools, appropriate tools, getting access to finance, coming up with solutions, knowledge, innovation, digitization, information on non-revenue water. I think all of these things are very important. But what I've gotten so far is that already there are some solutions somewhere in the world. Somewhere it's happening. So these sorts of forums where we can have, I think, to create that enabling environment where we can have that partnership and collaboration to share these issues, to share these learnings so that others can learn from it. I think that for me is the takeaway that I get from all of this. There are a lot of good examples of the world. If we can have the forums, collaboration and sharing, all of us will benefit, our water sectors will benefit, and our people will benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Usamate. On that, we implore everybody to look at this Water Resilience Hub that ADB with its partners is going to be launching on Thursday, which is single most focused on three things: connect, collaborate, and capacitate. We have to share what Minister Usamate mentioned. Last thoughts from Ms. Komini, if I could also invite you to share one important message that you would like to share with our water sector leaders and actors that we should focus on to accelerate water security resilience in the region, please.
Thank you, Nita. We are calling governments, decision makers to take urgent action and protect, prepare, prioritize. Protect the health, the safety, the learning opportunities of every child. Prepare children and young people to live in a climate change world. Improve their adaptive capacity, ensure their voices are heard, they are acted on, and that their education, their skills are enhanced so they can participate and be part of creating a sustainable future that's their future. Prioritize children, prioritize young people in climate funding and resources, because adaptation and resilience building remains critically underfunded and under-resourced. And we know it is so essential to protect lives. Again, protect children, prepare children, prioritize children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Komeni. Protect, prepare, prioritize children. And if I may add, let's bring women and youth into water sector delivery. This has been my personal mantra. I started working in water sector 27 years ago, and I used to be the only woman. And now in this forum, I'm delighted to share with you 52% of our high-level panelists are women leaders. And 48% of 150 panelist speakers are women. And of course, youth I already mentioned. We went all out, and we shall continue all out to bring them into the picture. Now, finally, we have an illustrator with us, Pushpin, who have been summarizing the session this morning as we speak. I would like to invite the Pushpin artist to show the illustration that summarizes the discussion. It is better than me attempting to summarize the discussion. Wonderful. Our goal is resilient, water secure. Key approaches from all of you that we've heard. We are doing this for the young people, indeed, and children, and rethinking how water is used, strategies, the challenges they have drawn very beautifully. Private sector participation, digitization, partnership, legislative frameworks, blending government with private sector approaches, and so on. So with this, I would like to thank all our distinguished panelists. We are very thankful for you having given your time to us and your thoughts, very inspiring. And we also thank people who have joined us today and have registered in groundbreaking numbers. Please do continue to watch Asia Water Forum 2022. And we bring you over the next 3 days, very rich discussion with 150 panelist speakers, thought leaders from across the world on how we can collectively connect, collaborate, capacitate to build water security and resilience in our region. Thank you very much, and goodbye from Asian Development Bank.